So, hello everyone from Unleash in Las Vegas. I'm here with Steve Hunt from SAP today. Steve, good to see you.
Good to see you in this very loud, hectic showroom.
It is, but that's what it is about. So, so Steve, you just recently released a paper together with Jennifer Dole from 360 Insight about organizational restructuring. So, can you tell me about it, what motivated you to deliver this type of work?
Yeah, it really came, Jennifer and I were having a conversation, and I was talking about a book I just wrote called Talent Tectonics. It talks about using technology to reimagine work, and at the same time there was all this information about restructurings coming out, and in Q4 in the United States there were a lot of big restructurings, particularly in the tech industry, and just saying the frustration of how companies are doing these restructurings and they haven't learned anything. There's technology now that enables restructuring in such more effective ways, but companies were still doing it the same way they did it like in 2007, 2008. The only difference is now they're firing people by chat and instant messaging instead of in person, which I don't know if that's an advancement in technology.
Yeah, maybe
and so,
not.
but both of us, and I personally, most of us have lived through restructurings, and so aside from being focused on how do we use technology to create more effective work environments, which is like the purpose of my career, at a personal level it's frustrating because you see people go through the experience of restructuring and you're like, it doesn't have to be like this. The problem is companies are not using technology that's available for a variety of reasons, probably more than anything else because they don't even know it exists.
Okay. So, and that's also what surveys tell us, that restructuring projects, they sometimes struggle with reaching their goals. So what do you think is really the number one reason for that?
Yeah, the number one reason for restructuring not reaching its goals, I don't know the number, I'll tell you that, I guess it's two reasons. One is I think a lot of the decisions they make are based on really flawed data. They're made knee-jerk, how do we cost control, without thinking about how restructuring decisions actually affect the people in the organization, which leads to, as a direct result, what is usually viewed as the number one reason why restructurings fail. It's the workforce. That you're asking people to work differently in the future than they did in the past, and often they come out, all these assumptions, restructurings are made largely from a financial perspective. There are strategic restructurings, but particularly the ones that get a lot of the press, it's really driven by some financial shock to the organization.
Okay.
Whether that's an acquisition, whether it's a market downturn, variety of reasons. And so they're driven by financial decisions with all these assumptions that looking at financial numbers, forgetting that what drives financial numbers is the behavior of people, and if you shock the organization, it affects people's employee experience, which means they may not do what you're planning to do. And there is quite a bit of data, probably famously Wayne Cassio did a study years ago, where most companies that go through restructurings, particularly ones that involve workforce reductions, do not exceed successful financial results. They may eventually recover, but it takes a long time. And it's not, again, companies need to restructure. That's the reality of the world. The pace of restructuring is faster now than ever before, especially when you include acquisitions. But we need to get much better at it, and that's what prompted us to write this paper, is to talk about how technology can enable companies to restructure in much more effective ways that reduces the negative impact on employee experience.
Okay, I see. Yeah, makes total sense. And so basically you're saying that using the right technology at the right point in time can reduce those negative impacts on the workforce?
Yeah.
So
it's almost like people are going on trips and don't use mobile phones or apps. It's like, I've still got my Frommer's travel guide. You're like, it's stupid, you could do the same thing much more effectively if you just avail the technology that's available. And we wrote this paper to increase awareness of how technology can enable us to restructure much more effectively in the future than we have in the past.
Okay, I see. Can you maybe, when we talk about the technological capabilities, can you Can you maybe give us one example or a little bit more detail on what exactly improves the process?
The way the paper is written, if we look at it, the first issue with restructuring is it's often based on very limited data. It's people looking at spreadsheets that basically just have employees' name, cost center, salary, and demographics. No sense of team structures, no sense of how employees actually work with each other in terms of organizational relationship networks. And so bringing in data that gives organizations a more full look at it. And there's really cool data. I mean, Ingentis, what you guys do, is a really good example of it, but there's a lot of systems now that allow organizations to take a much more holistic view of, wow, if we eliminated these positions, what are the repercussions it has on other positions? Or if we eliminate this team, are we losing critical skills that we could maybe reapply somewhere else? So basically starting with much better data, and there's all kinds of technology that gives you better data on skills, employee experience, organizational design. That's the first part. Then the second part is executing the restructuring decision itself, which often involves moving people into different roles, enabling people to perform new roles. It may be exiting people, but there's a right and a wrong way to exit people. You may want to shift them into like contractor positions. Often there's a view of restructuring as all or nothing. You're either working for us or you're gone. In reality, a lot of people would be very open to restructuring and saying, hey, I'll move into a part-time or a contractor role. So using technology that enables us to manage the transitions in a much more effective manner. And then the last one is technology allows us to measure the experience that you're giving people the whole time through employee listening technology. It's amazing how many restructurings happen with almost no real attention paid to how it affects employees. You know, there's no, how do you feel about it? And that's why so many of them fail, because the biggest group that you should think about in a restructuring is not necessarily the people you're letting go, it's the people that are sticking around.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, now that being said, the people sticking around should feel that you let the people go in a way that they're like, I'd rather be let go than quit. Because the people you're keeping also are the ones that are probably have the highest chances of finding jobs otherwise. I think often people forget the stuff that makes people highly valuable also makes them the biggest retention risk. High-performing, valuable skills.
Yeah, makes sense, Makes sense,
So, I have a question for you.
Okay.
You've asked me a lot of questions about restructuring this paper, thank you. So, as I said, Ingentis does really cool stuff that is very relevant to this topic. And when we were writing the paper, we talked to you about some of that. As a person myself that has been involved in designing HR technology, one of the frustrating things is you know what your technology can do, and you know, man, it has so much potential. Why aren't people using it that way? How do you feel that when you look at Ingentis and look at restructuring? How do you wish people were using your technology?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense what you're saying, because that's exactly what we are experiencing as well. And for us, since our solution is very data agnostic, so we can bring in data from various data sources and combine those data. That's what we do very well. So using only one data source might not bring you far enough in your journey. So that would be one of the things where I would say that there's a lot of potential. All companies have a lot of data in different systems. Where we are very good at is visualizing those data and then do the restructuring, what we have been talking about. But certainly the more data you bring in a reasonable way, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. But if you use the data that are really relevant, as you just said also, bring in skills. If skills are relevant in your process, bring it in. We can do it. And so this is number one. And then certainly use the visualizations that we offer. I mean, where we come from is organizational charting, but that's like 25 years ago. We still do that in a great way, for sure, but we can also do other types of visualizations. And it's not always the org chart which makes most sense in every situation. So just, as you said, use what's there.
Use the data you have. I think it's the same thing, and take advantage of the people you have. The reality is we have to restructure more often. That's not going to slow down, so we really need to get better at it. And I think part of it just sort of, one of the great things about this conference and everything attending it is I often say that our understanding of technology enables and constrains our imagination. So one of the things that if people are out there that you're involved in restructuring, take some time just to look at what's possible, because it's possible to do it so much more effectively. And also though, you want to get this in your organization now, because often when restructurings happen, they often happen very, very quickly. So if you don't have these systems up and running, you're going to go back to the people in a room with Excel spreadsheets, and that is not a good way to do it. So that's kind of why we wrote the paper, and thank you very much for the opportunity to share it. I appreciate the questions.
Very nice talking to you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.